So welcome to the Workplace Literacy webinar, and thank you for joining. And I appreciate my co-presenters hopping in as well because I wanted to be able to, um, not just talk in theory, but also talk in practice. And I do just want to briefly mention that workplace literacy is not a new concept. It was very big with lots of federal investment in it in the 90s. So maybe you all have lots of experience with workplace literacy, and I invite that to the conversation. So I just have a presentation that kind of goes through all the nuts and bolts of it as far as I see it in my experience and in my research, but it's probably not everything encapsulated. So want to give shout out to Erin Sebelius at Literacy Together, Ellie Varn at AB Tech, Jennifer Pardue at Surry, Haley McDaniel at Blue Ridge, Ginger, I don't know if you're on here from Fayetteville, but I've got James Mitchell from Fayetteville also, and Steve Gunter from Mayland. So I also will address that a lot of the advertisement that went out for this webinar said Wake Tech will be presenting. And as we began to go through our preliminary meetings, I was mistaken. Wake Tech is not currently running a workplace literacy program, but they might in the future. So that's why they're not on the list today. So initially I thought they would be, but they're not. So please forgive the error. So if you were here to hear Wake Tech present, I'm so sorry. All right, let's dive into workplace literacy. Okay, so workplace adult education and literacy activities are a little bit different than our run-of-the-mill adult education offerings because they are offered in collaboration with an employer or an employee organization like a union. And they are designed to meet the employer's goals and improve the efficiency of the workforce. So that the networking with the employer and getting to know what their objectives are in the whole thing is a new piece. It's a little bit different than some of the other work that we do. The curriculum is generally contextualized and task-based, and it's often focused on what students can produce. So if it's an ESL class, it's often going to be heavily focused on kind of speaking and writing. And if you're looking in kind of the broader academic context for curriculum or ideas or research, it's often going to be under English for specific purposes or task-based instruction. And it's going to result in employees gaining skills that may make them eligible for pay raises or promotions. And in terms of outcomes reporting, you're going to be reporting MSG4 progress milestones that are verified by the employer. They provide a letter or a progress report, something like that. It goes in the student's file, and then you upload it to the student portfolio in Advances. And that is how you're tracking your MSGs for workplace literacy. All right. So ideally, employees are paid to attend and they have some input into the course design. So that they are collaborating, it's participatory, they're excited at what their employer is offering them. You're gathering feedback from the employees and able to use that to inform the class and show that to the employer. And the career ladder is very clear. So students see, oh, if I learn these skills or if I earn this certification, my next step at this company could look like XYZ. When they meet certain milestones, there's celebrations for that. And ideally, your data is going to be useful, like for you as a provider for reporting MSG4, but it's also useful for the company. And they're able to show continuous improvement over time. And that leads to measurable improvements in whatever their target is. They might be looking at productivity, employee morale, number of people retained over a certain period, something like that. Right. So here is a snippet of a workplace literacy class or a part of a workplace literacy class from Mayland. Um, and I'm sorry, my screen has keeps getting pop-ups, so I don't know if you all are seeing that. So, all right. So why do we do workplace literacy? One of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we talk about it this year is because it is a little bit different. And we only have like 100 right now. So far this year, there's 184 students in our state that are coded as having been in a workplace literacy this program year. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to grow here. And workplace literacy students are already employed. They've already filled out employment paperwork at that employer. It helps us serve the employers and network, and the employers can talk with the workforce board about how great it is having Title II involved, and they begin to see you as a part of the solution about what makes North Carolina first in workforce preparation. When I saw that we were splashed all over, national news, North Carolina first in workforce preparation, I really wanted a stronger spotlight shown towards adult ed and what we contribute to that. I think there was a lot of discussion about apprenticeship and workforce training, and I thought, gee, adult ed needs to come to the front of your mind when you're talking about why we're workforce first in workforce prep. Um, so it also helps the students advance at the company. We're getting the MSG4 outcomes, and it can reduce your NRS testing burden if you're using alternate placement. So I'll get into that in a little bit. And it's going to improve your follow-up outcomes because these students, after they finish the program, hopefully they're still employed. Hopefully they're earning more than they were when they first enrolled with you. All right, so just to kind of help us anchor, I'm going to hand it over to my co-presenters here to explain a bit about their program and how it works. So you can see a smattering of different offerings that are happening across the state. So you can begin to think about what this might look like in your area. So I'll hand this one off to Erin.
All right, thanks. So we're Literacy Together in Asheville, and we have done small group ESL classes led by trained volunteer tutors at various different employers over the years. We've done it at a landscaping a company, an insulation company. We had a hotel group where we taught in 3 different hotel sites for a couple of years. But this this program that we have now at Mills Manufacturing is the first one that's ever been an official, workplace literacy program in terms of in the eyes of the state, where we can get the MSG4 and that kind of thing. So what we partnered with Mills Manufacturing, which contracts with the US military to make parachutes, and I think other things now, but it was mainly parachutes for a long time. And so we I think when we started, we had 6 or 7 small group classes that met there on site just once a week for 2 hours, led by our normal trained volunteer tutors. And honestly, the curriculum is mainly just English work, English for life and work, which is what we teach all of our students. But there also was a component of vocabulary around the machines that they use there and some safety equipment and some of the paperwork that they have to deal with, some of them. So pretty basic and straightforward. The factory operates Monday through Thursday. They do 10-hour days, and then Friday people either don't work, or if they need to finish a project, a contract by deadline and they're running behind, then they'll offer students overtime on Fridays. So our classes are on Fridays, and sometimes we have to work around whether the students are working overtime or not. So we've had to change the time of the class sometimes, and we have had missed classes because students are working. They can't very easily turn down the opportunity for overtime pay. So sometimes that takes precedence. But we've had lots of people get promotions and be spotlighted in their, employee newsletter and employee of the month and that kind of thing. So it's been a real positive process. And this is our third year at Mills. We started in 2023. Did you want me to go into any more detail than that, Rebecca, or is that good for
No,
now?
that's great.
Okay.
All right. Ellie?
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie. I'm an ELA instructor at AB Tech, and I'm currently teaching a workplace literacy course at System Logistics in their facility in Arden. Um, I created most of this course from scratch. A lot of, I think, the success of workplace literacy courses is dependent on a lot of customization and tailoring it to the needs of the employer. So I was fortunate to be able to go through like the employee handbook, as well as being able to shadow students on a shift for about an hour before going through and making the materials for the class. So I was in on that shift, I was both able to evaluate what the level of the students was and like where their English skills were at, as well as kind of seeing where there were lapses in communication and where they were really needing to have a more in-depth vocabulary for their work. So in doing so, I made the materials for the class. We meet once per week on Thursday mornings, only for 2 hours. And so because of that, we aren't able to cover a ton of the material that I want to be able to cover. It's not as in-depth as I hope it could be. So to compensate for that, I've done a lot of homework assignments for them, as well as having like weekly vocabulary tests. So that vocabulary on their vocabulary quizzes that they take at the beginning of each class is just really focusing on a lot of the technical vocabulary that I typically wouldn't expect a level one, level two, level three student to know. This is typically something like where I would still be wanting to introduce basic verbs, basic things like that. But in this case, we're going to get into some really nitty-gritty specifics around like workplace policies, safety procedures, things like that. So with that, I've been able to make sure that in class, we're not just focusing on that vocabulary as much, but we're really able to spend most of our time focusing on the grammar that helps us put that language into context. So not just knowing that's a screw, that's a bolt, but also being able to fit that into grammar. So a good example of how I've been able to facilitate that in the classroom, we like to do a lot of discussion games. One of their favorites is Two Truths and a Lie, which is a really good way to break the ice. So using like positives or negatives with I have grammar. So I have a screw, I have a box, I have safety glasses, and then using realia in that so that they really are able to contextualize it for their workplace. We also have the fortunate opportunity where our classroom has two windows. One of them looks out towards a construction site where they're building a new wing to the facility, and the other one looks out actually onto the assembly floor where the students are working. And so we can actually all just press up to the window and start to build sentences looking at their actual workplace. So for example, if we're using this, that, or there is, there are grammar, prepositions of place, they could say, there is a palletizer, which is what they're assembling at System Logistics. There is a palletizer next to the loading dock. And so they're able to actually construct those sentences looking at their workplace and the things that they're actually doing. And we only have about 3 classes left. And so I'm going to be a little bit sad when we finish up this class because I really enjoyed teaching it and they're doing really fantastic. They're improving a lot.
Awesome. Thank you. And can I know at Mills Manufacturing with Literacy Together, it was kind of a long-standing relationship, but this systems logistics relationship is newer. Can you talk a little bit about how you connected with the employer and their role in helping you design the class?
Yeah, so this is the first cohort with System Logistics. And Amber, I think, can speak a little bit more to how that initially they reached out to AB Tech. But afterwards, I was able to get involved as the instructor and really build a relationship with the kind of HR person who is my touch point person. and able to share materials back and forth so that I could really customize the class to their specific needs.
Great. Thank you. Amber, did you want to say anything?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries. So Rebecca will remember Lisa Rickman at AV Tech. So she works with our customized training department, and they had already had a relationship with System Logistics with some other English language trainings. So they had mentioned the need for an ELA class, and that is how we got connected.
Great. Thank you. And then I saw a question in the chat from Lori about what does the work incentive look like? So basically, what benefit do the students get after having completed this class, or what's the aim that you're looking for?
So they definitely are going to earn a certificate at the end of it. So just to demonstrate to their employer and just for developing their own resumes, as well as being paid for their time in class. So they are being compensated for their time in class. There is no direct lineup for promotion or anything like that, but they do have a supervisor that they work directly under who is bilingual in English and Spanish. And so they understand that if they were to want to move into a position similar to his, that would require a certain level of English competency.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Gonna move on to Surry Community College, which is running also ESL classes on site at a few different employers. Jennifer?
So this partnership with Applied Polymerics actually began. Our county has like a leadership class every year, and a couple of people from our area, the College and Career Readiness, was part of that group, and just talking about some different things that we do. And actually, Courtney Jackson, some of you know her, was mentioned that we can actually go into businesses and teach classes such as English uh, for individuals. And one of the HR leaders was actually part of that leadership class and then reached out to us later on and said that they have a need. And so that's how that partnership started. So the class at Applied Polymerics meets one day a week on Fridays for 2 hours. We've worked with the HR manager to establish several goals, focus on reporting like equipment malfunctions and issues, and reporting injuries and stuff like that. But the goals are also broken down into milestones. So that helps guide instruction. So for the equipment malfunction issues, a milestone for that would be identify and name basic equipment and vehicle parts in English. And so having those smaller milestones also help the students earn those MSGs a little quicker. So it's been a positive experience for us. And we do have one additional workplace literacy class that actually became in existence, I guess, because of this current one. We've got the referral from Applied Polymerics. So we actually have another one at Myrta Services, which we are also doing English language arts there, or language acquisitions. So I think that's about it at Surry.
Awesome. And Surrey did a great job. They outlined it all in an MOU. They outlined their curriculum with a checklist of skills that they were going to teach, milestones for each skill. They also selected the content standards that they were going to focus on, and then kind of wrapped it up with a nice certificate at the end, which is nice. So I just did a little screenshot of a part of one of their work, their skills progress checklist. And these can be developed, based off of whatever it is that the employer is hoping to achieve with the class. So if it's that they need to train somebody on some new job standards, or they need to, improve performance in a current role, or they're studying kind of developing skills for a future role, you can use some of those tasks and skills and build that into a progress checklist, or kind of key modules in your curriculum, how you're going to structure your class to make sure that you're meeting the employer's need. All right, Haley.
Okay, so we are in the process of getting our ELA classes started with Linamar. They are a local manufacturing company. So Linamar reached out to us last year. They've wanted to get classes started for a long time at their facility. So when I initially met with the manager there, he told me he has a lot of people who are just fantastic workers. They deserve promotions, and the only thing in the way of that is the language barrier. So basically, I worked really closely with them to get what topics they wanted covered, what they wanted their employees to know, workplace specific vocabulary. I took a tour of the facility. They sent me all their guides and manuals and specific words, job position titles, all of those things. And I kind of I used that to develop a scope and sequence. And it has different units, and it covers things like workplace safety, talking to HR, requesting time off, reporting an incident, and then of course, the name for different equipment and machines that they use, different job positions, things like that. So that took quite a bit of time to develop. And they have a lot of people interested. So this is kind of a challenge that I ran into. When we were finally ready to start the class, he told me, originally I thought it was like a group of 20, and then we were ready to start, and he said, "Oh, I have 90 people, and they want to start right now." And I was like, "Okay, hang on, I need to get my stuff situated here." And he told me that like while I was there doing intake paperwork, and so I kind of had to backtrack and say, "Okay, we really I need to pilot this with a smaller group. This is new to us. We haven't done it before. I want to make sure that we're doing things the right way, that this is, going to work well. I don't want to just, jump all in and it be chaos with 90 people." So, we're going to pilot it first for a month or two with one class of 20, and then add classes as things feel sustainable. The other issue that we ran into was his employees only wanted to attend 1 hour per week. So we were going to run 4 classes, each at 1 hour per week. So students were only going to get 1 hour of instruction per week. So again, that was a lot of conversation, just trying to help them understand the educational side of things, that, for students to make progress, we really need a minimum of 4 hours per week, at least with ELA students. So a lot of this has just been sitting down, conversation, kind of going back and forth about things, just to try to help them understand. They're not in that educator mindset, just to try to help them understand the things that we need to happen and what's best for the student. So they did finally agree to 4 hours per week. They are paying their employees for this, so that's a huge deal. And then we ran into one other challenge. They were a little uncomfortable with the employer letter piece when I first explained to them that we needed a letter that kind of stated that this could potentially lead to a promotion or a raise in the future. Their HR was a little funny about that. So again, that took another more conversation and just explaining, you're not promising this to employees. You're just acknowledging that this could be an opportunity, or this is what this could lead to. This would be the end goal, is that they improve their skills and eventually get a promotion or a raise with that. And so they finally understood, and we got the letter taken care of as well. But again, it was just another one of those things that takes time and conversation. Okay, and then the only other thing I was going to say about Linamar was originally, we're doing we were going to use TABE test as the placement test for this, but I have recently learned a lot about alternative placement, so I think I am now going to revise my submission for this to include alternative placement.
Nice. And one of the things about Linamar on their company website, they talk a lot about their commitment to growing their own talent and promoting from within. They have a lot going on in the internship and apprenticeship space. So this fits that nicely. So I'm glad you leaned into that and explained in the letter, right where the idea is that they're going to grow with the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Pass it off to Eric and Ginger if you're here.
So good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So good afternoon again. Eric Mitchell, James Mitchell, whatever works for you guys, it works for me. So I'm going to preface this with, I just started doing this in January. I'm new to Fayetteville Tech, not necessarily new to CCR. But what we do here is a VSEP class, and you can see the acronym at the bottom of your screen there. We work with soldiers who are going to re-enlist. And so they take the AFCT, which is just the Armed Forces Classification Test. So they have a GT score there, a general technical score, technical score there. And the goal for this class is to raise that GT score. The higher the score, the more open they are to different opportunities and jobs within the military and within the Army, because we work on the Army base here. So we focus on three things. Let me try to say this: arithmetic reasoning, which is just word problems for their math portion. A lot of basic math, fractions, decimals, word problems, ratios, proportions, and the application of those problems. Word knowledge, just their vocabularies is pretty much just what it sounds like, word knowledge, working on their vocabulary. And then their paragraph comprehension, which is pretty much what you would see in your regular ABE classes. Taking a passage, extracting information, answering questions based on that. So we have the soldiers for a month. I always say students, but I like to go with soldiers, right? We have the soldiers for a month. We generally start a new cohort beginning of the month, the first of every month. We have a new cohort that starts Friday. And then the testing center here at Bragg reserves 2 days for our students to test at the end of the month. And so we have those days scheduled for them as well. And so we spend that time from when they come to class until test date, just remediating, reteaching, introducing them to some new concepts, showing them how to navigate it and better prepare for those tests. It's just myself and our other instructor, Dr. Bullock, who focuses on those things. Every month we see about, depending, but the most I've seen since I've been here in January is around 90 students. But every month, about 85 or so, given what's going on currently, with some deployments and things, we've seen a fewer students. But we focus on that pretty intense. It's a month sounds like a long time until you start going through the curriculum. And then it's pretty intense. It moves pretty well, but I want to brag, we are the best in the country at what we do. So, but it relies on the students to have a little give and take back and forth with us, and we spend our time just revising curriculum, updating curriculum as we go along. We have students who've tested today, so we're eager to get those test scores back right now. The goal for them is to raise their GT scores. Like I said, most of them come in with a score lower than 100. And so we look for that growth. Our average growth so far has been about 12 points, which is quite a big leap for a lot of our soldiers. Our high so far has been a 142, and I think the max you can get is like a 153, if I'm not mistaken. So we've seen some great growth there. And some counseling. We do some educational counseling with our soldiers as well. Just if it doesn't go the way they like, we invite them back. We talk about their next steps. I know they're in the military. They submit their packets to increase their opportunities and their money, their pay, but also in just continuing their education. We are at an education center here, so there are other colleges that are represented at this center. And so we do make sure that we introduce them to those as well. I think I've hit the highlights.
Yeah.
Not sure what more. Yeah. If there's questions, I'm open to them.
And the fun thing about, or I mean, I'm sure there's a lot. I don't know if fun is the right word, but my understanding is that this partnership between Fort Bragg and Fayetteville Tech has been going on, maybe
Yes.
for decades and
Yes.
decades.
Decades. Yes.
But it's only been written up as a workplace literacy program just in the last few years,
Yes.
and it has shot the MSG rate through the roof.
Yeah.
So that, having these new MSG types 3, 4, and 5, we as a state are evolving in our data collection practices. So like the program has been around for a long time. We just haven't been able to really showcase the results until the last couple of years for the federal government. So it's a great example of the adult basic ed programming or the adult literacy programming really being designed to meet the needs of the employer so that the student can level up their employment and gain more in their career path. And so I love that example. Thank you.
I would say roughly about 61, 62 a month since I've been here. That's been the average.
That's
So
phenomenal.
we achieved that goal. Like I said, the soldiers achieved that goal, and so we helped them along.
Awesome. So as we look at, so in Power BI, there is an option to run your NRS tables, and that's where you're going to get your most accurate data there out of Power BI. Table 6 will show you all the students that have been flagged as in a workplace literacy program. You can drill into it and kind of see them all there. And so as I look at it, there are more colleges in the state or more providers in the state than this that make up that 186 that we have students in workplace literacy across our state. But these are the ones where I see outcomes being reported, or I've had conversations with people and I know that they have a program running or have had one running in not too long ago. And so Wilkes Community College partners with Tyson Foods. You may have seen them present at conferences in the past. We've got an example here from McDowell, and I didn't have Steve explain Mayland Community College's workplace literacy program because it's also ELA focused, but just wanted to give you an idea that other colleges and programs are looking into this, and it's an option. You can network amongst yourselves and get some good ideas as well. Here's a flyer that Surry Community College ran in their Con Ed catalog mailer that goes out across their service area, help spreading the word about some of what we can offer for employers. Just kind of an idea of something you might want to consider locally if this is something you want to go after. Okay, and then in our planning meetings for this, and I said, what do we need to cover? What do people really want to know about workplace literacy? And several times I heard, we just need a checklist. So this is my attempt at the checklist, and apologies in advance because it's a lot of words, but I wanted to be true to the ask and make sure that I included a checklist here in the presentation so you all have it. So you've heard these programs kind of talk about these different stages that they've gone through with their program. And I will also admit, people who have worked with me in the past know that like I can talk about things that like might be in the theoretical world or the ideal world, and then in the trenches it looks maybe a little bit different. So feel free to ask questions like that, and people who are doing the work currently can address it from what they see at their level. So you're going to tour the workplace and talk with the key players and kind of get the lay of the land in terms of who are the stakeholders, what do they hope to achieve, and are they also working with another partner at the college? Like, is NC Edge involved or apprenticeship? What does the career ladder look like for employees at that organization? And what skills would the employees need to develop in order to be competitive for the next promotion? You're going to hash out those details about program length, timing, location, how the employees will be recruited or selected, whether or not the company will pay them for all of their time, some of their time, not pay them. I always like to try to get the employees paid for the time if possible, and what the learning outcomes should be. And that employer is probably not familiar with education speak. So after you've asked a lot of open-ended questions and gathered this info in your notes, you might need to draft something, and you might say, here's, based off of what I heard you say, here's what I think we can deliver. Does this line up with what you're looking for? And so maybe that coming up with those learning outcomes might be on you. So just be prepared for that. And then you would flesh out your MOU in terms of what classroom space, whose Wi-Fi am I using, how long is the program going to last, what's the company's role in helping get students into the class, that kind of thing. You'd complete that IET template for Workplace Literacy MSG4 and submit it to the Career Pathways Moodle portal just like you would for an IET. And in situations for workplace literacy, it is helpful, like if you have that employer letter on letterhead and even the MOU, if you have a kind of a scope and sequence, or the more information you can submit with that, it's helpful. It helps give the system office kind of a full picture of what you're proposing to run at this location. And I know you're working with another partner, and so if you submit something and you need like advice before you submit it, or you need a rush order on something, I can't always promise, but it's okay to ask, because we want to make sure that we do what we can to make sure that you're able to meet the need of your employer. Erin, you've got a hand raised.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wondered if you could clarify that last bullet, whether an MOU signed by both parties could replace the employer letter. Because it looks like you're saying either or, and I thought it had to be the letter. And we actually have a situation right now where we're doing this with another company, another employer, who I didn't make sure that they provided that letter for us, which I offered a draft of. But I didn't make sure that they were fine with it and signed it and gave it to us before we started. So we're not counting that as we have not submitted it as a workplace literacy thing with the state, because I thought we had to have that letter. But we do have a signed MOU. So if they don't want to sign the letter, but I have the MOU, can I just go ahead and put that
so
in?
what I'm looking for here is like, what is going to count as evidence that's going to go in the student file? And so that might be a part of your MOU. Where it's kind of like program outcomes, or so if it's built into your MOU, you could do that. But you need to submit something that says like, this is what we're going to count as evidence of having obtained or reached our goal for MSG. But I'll also say you can always like revise. So if you get to the point where you've got something that you're going to use for evidence for that MSG4, and you want to submit it for an IET template that you previously submitted, reach out to Matthew.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And then just like Ellie talked about, gathering relevant artifacts from the workplace. What does this company do? Who do they serve? Whom do they serve? What products do they use? What things do they make? Do they ship things out and receive things? Are they talking to customers on the phone? What's going on here? So take some time, look around the workplace, check out your potential training space, and see what they'll share with you in terms of job descriptions, job aids, that kind of thing. You want to select or design your curriculum and assessments, and you want to consider task-based assessments and make sure that whatever this assessment gets to your proof of the student making progress. That's going to go in your student file and be uploaded into Advances. But make sure, are the results of these assessments meaningful to the employer? Could they go on the employee's resume? Is it going to be useful in helping them prepare for a future promotion? So an example would be like the WorkKeys CRC test. Some employers really value that, and leveling up from bronze to silver helps them get a raise. Or like at Fayetteville Tech with Fort Bragg, that leveling up their GT score is very clearly associated with being eligible for certain promotions. At some employers, they won't hire you full time, like they might have you on as a temp if you don't have your high school equivalency diploma, but they might not hire you full time until you have that diploma. Or maybe they don't allow you to move into a supervisory role until you have a high school diploma or equivalent. Or if it's developing your English communication skills, and so you want to kind of showcase, okay, they've been in this class so that we can help them learn English. We want to then showcase what they've learned to their managers or to HR. You could have them do a sample interview or a reverse job fair. Complete a task and evaluate it using a rubric to show to HR that you said to be eligible for promotion, they would really need to be able to do XYZ better, and they've just demonstrated that they can now do that better. So that would be your evidence. So there's a lot of things you could be a North Star digital literacy certificates if digital literacy is the focus of your class. It's just going to depend on what it is that the employer said they wanted to achieve. You need to identify and orient the instructor to the teaching site and share the company's why for the program with the instructor, because that instructor is really the magic that makes the whole thing happen. They're representing your organization offsite at this employer. They're the face of the program, and they're important for curriculum and communication. So if they're enthusiastic about the opportunities at this company, then those employees become enthusiastic as well. So make sure that that instructor has some buy-in and understands who to go to at the local site if they need something, that kind of thing. And then brainstorm some ideas about how you're going to kind of put the cherry on top at the end of the program. Is it going to be a graduation party or a reverse job fair? Students going to do presentations? What does that look like at the company? Does the HR team write up a bulletin board display for each completer, or something like that? You're going to launch the class, and then you're going to think about what times are we going to give updates to the employer, reflect on how this program is going, revisit, tweak, etc. So that is my checklist in theory. Do any of my current providers want to weigh in on any components of it? Just interrupt me if something comes up, because I do want to save time for questions as well. So a couple of notes here in regards to student enrollment. So we've talked about alternate placement in lieu of NRS pre-testing. And so if this is an approved MSG for workplace literacy program, you can use alternate placement. There's a place on the IET checklist or IET template that you would check that that's your plan. But don't use alternate placement until you have gone to the assessment manual and read up about it. You do have to like submit something to system office, and Jess and Jen are involved, and but it's a great plan. It eliminates your need to do NRS pre-testing and post-testing. So I saw a question about what do we do about the 40 hours? And in a workplace literacy class, you don't have to let that stop you from really meeting the needs of the employer. You have the flexibility by using alternate placement to really tailor to the needs of the students and the employer. Talk with the company about what their role is going to be in maintaining your enrollment. Signing, are they going to select a certain percentage of employees off of certain shifts or off of certain teams? How are they going to stagger workload? That kind of thing. And does HR communicate with supervisors so that supervisors know when a student is going to be absent? Kind of what does all that look like? And is HR interested in the students' progress as they go along? And are they supporting this with any career counseling or talking to the student about what those next steps are? So that's something to talk with the employer about ahead of time. On the LEIS form and in the advances demographics section, you want to remember to mark workplace literacy. That's what helps them show up on NRS Table 6. And in advances, you need to add the IET secondary registration type when they begin the program. All right. Whew. Here's an example. This is from McDowell Tech where they were running one with Baxter. This is an example letter, and I'm recycling this slide from Lindsay and Ginger's presentation a couple of years ago about workplace literacy at the System Office Conference. But if you wanted to see an example letter, here's a good one. It explains, it's on letterhead. 2, it explains that there's an opportunity for pay raise or promotion. 3, the class is being held on site at the employer. And then 4, it outlines what the progress milestones are. And so here it says also progress milestones set in collaboration with employer and specified in company letter, checklist, or MOU. So there it is again, Erin. If your MOU outlines what the milestones are, you can do that. All right, so they have HiSET practice test, HSE test, or a North Star digital literacy assessment. Okay. Documenting MSG4 results, there's a process. Just very fast, I included this so in case you want to reference this later. They need a workplace literacy and demographics. They need the IET secondary registration type. You want to verify that the student met the milestone with the employer and document that. You want to put the evidence in the student's file. You're going to upload a copy to the student's portfolio in advances. You're going to report the outcome in advances. And then, if appropriate, you're going to remove the workplace literacy and IET secondary enrollment from the student if they have finished the program and are moving on. Okay. I've got panel discussion and then a references page and resources, and I'm just going to point this out. COABE has a Beyond the First Meeting. It is a PDF guide on how to set up a good workplace literacy program. And then there's some other stuff down here, our MSG 345 webinar, the state policy on MSGs. So just wanted to, they have the Behind Every Employer campaign, which is great. So just, those are linked there for future reference. So I am going to do a quick, Steve, do you have anything from this that you wanted to share on the panel piece? I'm going to do a quick scan through the questions to make sure I'm getting what I need to. But
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thanks. Kick us off on this section.
So, ours was the IT kind of, I mean, the workplace literacy opportunity kind of landed in our laps. We were talking with a local employer who wanted us to serve about 9 students and their employees there with English language skills, kind of to set them up for possible promotion to middle management. And I'm proud to say that before, I think we offered a 12-week program, and before the end of the program, 3 of them had already qualified for promotions and had moved into middle management and more since then. So we're quite proud of that. Um, that I, just to address that first question, that's what we're quite proud of. Before the program was even over, we had 3 of those 9 students who had qualified for a promotion.
I love that.
Yeah. The thing that didn't go as expected, I'll slide this in there too. We were having, as we were kind of finalizing the plans for the content, we'd worked, collaborated with our HR to identify the skills to teach and all. We offhand mentioned, like, if you have other students who'd want to join an English class here, we'd be happy for them to join. Well, on enrollment day, instead of 9, we had 63 show up. So we were
Wow.
completely unprepared, but it was great. We quickly brought in the troops as far as additional teachers, and it was quite a summer.
To any of my, oh, can you all just check to make sure you're muted? I'm getting some ambient noise. Or Matthew, maybe you can help me figure out where that's coming from and mute it. Thanks. Is there anybody else from our panel colleges that wanted to address any of these highlights?
I can say that one thing that we didn't expect, or a challenge that we faced, has been attendance. So, we've had employees, leave the company. We've had employees working overtime instead of coming to class. We had one of our companies laid off half the class 3 weeks into the program, and so our enrollment dropped. So that's just, and I guess, that's just something that we always have to deal with in adult ed, but that's probably been the most challenging thing.
On a similar note, I've had students, 2 students no longer work with the company. We started with a cohort of 10, so then that brought it down to 8. And then I have 2 students who are part-time employees, and so sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. And then I had another 2 students that got transferred from this main assembly facility to the warehouse facility in Fletcher. So now they're no longer attending class. And I've also had students show up to class that were not enrolled in class. And since they missed the census date, they cannot participate in our class. So in that sort of sense, I think it's important to make a very clear distinction of what our policies have to be for attendance and things like that to the employer so that they're really communicating that clearly to the students.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Ellie. I would say in most cases, your workplace literacy program is probably going to be like a BSP 2000 contact hour kind of class, unless what the company is asking for fits really nicely with one of our combined course library membership course options. So I don't want to say 100% of the time, but very often it's going to be a contact hour class that wouldn't have that same enrollment limitation. But it is going to be different, depending on how the company wants to set it up. So they might be running cohorts of students through the class, or they might want one class that they can add students to as you go. So, talking through some of those logistics ahead of time with the employer is helpful. Anybody else have successes, hiccups, improvements? Or I can open it up also, because we're coming near the end, to questions. If anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question.
I'm curious, those who've participated, what would you say your general success rate is by the end of the class? Because I've experienced that. We've not done it set up like this, but I've done it. I've had like ESL classes at local industries, and I'm curious how most of you are seeing, like, your numbers from who starts and how many complete, like.
I can say with our program at Mills that we've had just kind of ongoing for years. Like it hasn't been a 12-week class or a 6-month class or whatever. It's just kind of started 3 years ago, and some people have left and new people have come on, but we're just kind of working through our regular life skills materials. And so in terms of retention, like I said, people have left the company or stopped coming to the classes because they weren't able to fit it into their personal schedules anymore. But we've constantly had new people join as well. And as far as success in terms of, MSGs and meeting the progress milestones that we set up in advance, I think the beauty of this kind of program is that you can set those up to be really achievable. And so anyone who stays with the program for a reasonable length of time can meet one of your potential milestones or progress checkpoints and earn an MSG that way. So it is successful in that way.
I think it's been helpful explaining to the HR contact, like, what these milestones actually mean for us as a program, and like that it means for our performance. I mean, so they know that we can continue offering these classes at no charge for them. I don't know. And when I first started talking to them about it, that it was a win-win, it helps us and our students and our performance. And so maybe it'll help motivate them, like, to push like supervisors to get these turned in. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just being transparent. I think that has helped.
And that's part of the beauty of the MOU, and then planning some time in to kind of revisit how it's going. It's also great if you can run a cohort kind of program, because then you have the opportunity to do it in a shortish period of time. Like Amber and I were doing one at AB Tech that was 5 cohorts, and each cohort was 5 weeks long. So we got the opportunity to kind of learn cohort to cohort. So by the time you get to the end, you've got it kind of well ironed out. Or our instructor did in that case. We had a very motivated instructor.
Well, that's awesome. And then you get more MSGs per year, because the way we're doing it, we can only get one per student per year. So you're running more students through a program like that than we are the way we're doing it. It's a good
Yeah,
point.
I mean, and that program kind of ran for a year and then it didn't, so that's the benefit, is that you gain the bench strength and the experience of how to do this. And the downside is that it's really based on what the employer needs. And so we're being responsive to the needs of industry. And if they don't need it in an ongoing way, then that becomes, you got to take your show on the road to a different employer and see what you can replicate. Yeah. But MSGs are really strong in workplace literacy. So it's a good option for you. So again, here's your resource page. Lee will send this out, so you'll have your links to everything. COABE's Behind Every Employer campaign does include a website for employers about how they can rely on adult ed to help meet some of their needs. So you might want to use that to lean in on some of your marketing or something. If you're communicating with someone and you want to give them like here's an example kind of thing to get them thinking, the Behind Every Employer campaign may be useful. All right. I'll stay on for any last minute questions, but thank you all so much for joining. It's 3 o'clock on the nose, so we'll let you go if you need to. And I really appreciate your time and look forward to questions, correspondence, emails as they come up as you're thinking about programs and opportunities for your local programs this next year.